It's time for Downtown Hockeytown, presented by Labatt Blue Light. And before we bring on our guest, we are going to take another look at a couple of the prospects that the Red Wings may draft at that number 4 pick. The draft is on Tuesday night, so definitely make sure you are familiar with all of the prospects, courtesy of Labatt Blue Light and Ken Kale. Here's Lucas Raymond and Alexander Holtz.
It's time for a Word on Woodward prospect profile presented by Labatt Blue Light. As we look ahead to who the Red Wings are picking 4th overall, going to look at 2 talented wingers from Sweden, in Alexander Holtz and Lucas Raymond.
And the shot to finish. Holtz swords it up, what a goal! Holtz to Raymond, the 2 young stars set it up.
Holtz into the seam.
Alexander Holtz is ranked 2nd among international skaters behind only Tim Stützle. Playing in the top-flight Swedish Hockey League, Holtz notched 16 points in 35 games to lead all under-18 players in the SHL. His output matches the NHL Central Scouting evaluation of Holtz as a sniper with good selection of shots, who likes to shoot a lot, good playmaker, and passer. Central Scouting compared him to fellow Swedish winger and Nashville Predators Philip Forsberg for his elite hands and wrist shot. At 6 feet and 192 pounds, there isn't as much physicality in his game as you'd expect to go along with his goal-scoring ability. Given all that, who best to evaluate Holtz than his international teammate Lucas Raymond, who said, "His shot is enormous, and he has great vision and stick handling." This is high praise from our other featured winger, Lucas Raymond. Although Raymond lacks the size of Holtz and didn't put up the same numbers in a limited role, SHL powerhouse Frölunda, scouts are still raving about Raymond's high-end skill he showcased in the international tournaments for Sweden. NHL Central Scouting compares Raymond to the Maple Leafs' Mitch Marner, describing Raymond as a mobile, explosive, quick winger with speed and excellent puck control. He's smart, effective in traffic, creates scoring chances with quick moves, and he's a hard worker. Raymond's passing ability and hands make him an incredibly dangerous option on the power play. Fellow prospect Alexander Holtz saying, "Raymond is a special playmaker. His vision is great, but he can also shoot it, and he skates very well too." Are the Red Wings going to look for the next Swedish superstar to follow in the footsteps of Lidstrom, Holmstrom, and Zetterberg? Let us know which player you'd like the Wings to take with the 4th overall pick, and tune into Red Wings social media for the latest information leading into the NHL draft on Tuesday, October 6th.
Art and I are now joined by hockey writer Kevin Allen. Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us again today.
Always a pleasure.
The draft is right around the corner, and we just saw Lucas Raymond and Alexander Holtz. When you look at these 2 guys, Kevin, they're pretty similar. They play in the same league, both Swedish wingers. What one do you think would be a better fit for the Red Wings?
Well, I think it all depends on what you want out of the draft pick. I mean, Holtz is definitely the scorer. He's a guy that every time you see a scouting report on it, it talks about his great shot and what a sniper he is. And when you look at reports on Raymond, it's how dazzling he is. He's a setup guy, a creative guy. And it's sort of reminiscent to me as maybe the 2017 draft when we're talking about Raymond is that, Elias Pettersson was a guy that everybody liked. He was dazzling. He was a little bit smallish, and people sort of let him go, and he ended up going 5th. And obviously, he's ended up being a top-flight NHL player. So Raymond, at one point before the season started, I think was listed as a potential number 1 draft pick, and now he'll be down there for the Red Wings. So I think Steve Yzerman will have several good options. He can take a top-flight defenseman, compared to Niedermeyer and Jamie Drysdale, or he can take the sniper. Like we talked about at Holtz, or Raymond, the great dazzling playmaker, or maybe Rossi will be there, who's also a terrific scorer as well. So I think there's a lot of good options, and I think the Red Wings really will get a top player no matter who they take.
Kevin, when you look at it that way, and I guess maybe I've been to too many Red Wing games over the decades as you have, where people start chanting, "Shoot the puck, shoot the puck." And based on that, and I guess I shouldn't base it on, on fan chants, but I think the more I look at it, I think Alexander Holtz, the pure sniper in the group, if one of the top three forwards, if they're expected to go 1, 2, 3, Lafreniere, Byfield, and Stützle, and he doesn't go defense, he of course being Steve, I think Holtz, just because of his pure goal scoring ability for a team that, as you know, struggles to score goals, may be, I don't know, the obvious pick.
Well, there's a lot of logic to that. He's also a little bit bigger than Raymond. And even though the NHL has sort of adjusted and there's now room for the smaller player, especially the guy, a great skater like Raymond, size still, plays a role in determining the outcome, particularly in the playoffs. So I could see the Red Wings thinking like that. But anyone who's followed Steve Yzerman's history knows that he plays it very close to the vest. So most of us are simply guessing about what he might do, but I guarantee you Steve Yzerman has watched all of those players, if not in person, on film, and has a real good idea of which guy he thinks will be best for the organization.
And Kevin, I have to ask you, in our last show on Tuesday, we talked about Yaroslav Askarov, the goalie, and Jamie Drysdale, the top-rated defenseman. And we've heard time and time again that a team is built from the net out. So if that is the case, is there any chance that at that 4 pick we see Askarov off the board?
Well, I don't think so. I know a lot of people because Steve Yzerman drafted Vasilevsky, but that was much later in the first round. And if the Red Wings were down in the, say, 7, 8 slot, 9, when Askarov is projected to go in the 10 to 13 range, I think Yzerman would probably go off the board and take him because he's a top flight prospect in that. But I don't see Yzerman doing that this early in the draft. The number 4 pick, it's a little bit easier to project what a defenseman or a forward will be like in 5 to 10 years. It's much more difficult to project what a goalie will look like, especially when you consider that most goalies don't really, with few exceptions, obviously Vasilevsky being one of them, by the way, don't arrive until they're 24, 23, maybe at the earliest. So I think for the organization, it would be better for the Red Wings to stay clear of Askarov that early in the draft and go with a forward or a defenseman.
Kevin, this is supposed to be, a lot of talented players in the draft as usual, but a lot of high-end forwards. I mean, that's what this draft class of 2020 may be remembered for. With that said, Jamie Drysdale, although Sanderson is moving up the list too, Drysdale is the definitive best defenseman in this draft. Does that mean that he's worthy of the number 4 pick? Just because he's the best defenseman, where does he really kind of fall in that talent pool? If you're understanding my train of thinking, just because he's the best defenseman, do you just take him at 4 because he's the best defenseman?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a great question, Art, and I know what you're getting at. I think there are some teams that have Drysdale right at 4, believing that as rating them just as hockey players and not based on position, that's where Drysdale fit. But I don't think that's the majority. From the people that I've talked to, Drysdale is anywhere from 4 to 5 or 6. And a lot of teams have those forwards that we've been talking about all rated a little bit higher than Drysdale. And, I think, you have to, when you're building a team and you're building foundation blocks, I think you have to consider what you've done previously. And obviously in Yzerman's first draft, he took a premium defenseman. And that's why I think to take another one, that would give them a nice start to the defense, especially when they've got guys like Hronek who are still very young as well. And but I just don't see him doing that. I see, them taking a defenseman last year, and now this year they'll look at a premium forward.
Now, talking about defensemen, and everyone's kind of expecting Jamie Drysdale to be available at that number 4 pick if the Red Wings do indeed want him. But what if you've got the Ottawa Senators who have the 3 and 5 pick? Is there any chance they would go defenseman with that 3 pick? Because they know they're still going to get a quality forward at 5.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, a good question because, again, Well, I guess the other way to view it, though, is you got a chance to get, two of your top six forwards, which is
Mhm.
also difficult to fill as well. So I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll take the forwards, but, you never know. And if, I think the Red Wings would love it if somebody above them stepped out of the projected top three, because that puts then at four a player who, and the consensus certainly is that the top three everybody knows sort of who they're going to be. So I think the Red Wings would welcome that.
Well, I was just going to say, when you look at the overall picture, it's the more I think about it, the more I just see them going high end forward at number 4, because they really need help up front. Maybe even a center, maybe Perfetti, maybe Rossi, even though they're on the smaller side themselves, might be in the mix. I just don't, but I don't see LA or Ottawa taking a defenseman, having one of the really, really high end guys fall to the Red Wings at 4. I know that I'm kind of just like stating something here. You're probably thinking, what's the question? I guess my question is that I used to think it was Drysdale. I was on the Drysdale train forever. But the more I think about it, it makes sense that Detroit, as you said, should go forward at 4.
Yeah, and I've had scouts around the league, as they sort of generally the way it works, scouts will talk to the writers, and they're not so good about talking about what they're going to do, but they sure like talking about what other teams are going to do. And there's been a lot of talk about how the Red Wings might be interested in Raymond, as a guy who, at the start of the year, as I mentioned, people thought could be in the top 1 or 2. And for him to be available, like, he's a very skilled player, and as I said, maybe he's a little bit on the slight side, but so was Pedersen. Pedersen only weighed, I think, 145 pounds when he was drafted, and look at him today. So I think that the niftiness and the creativity of Raymond has a lot of scouts kind of interested, and I see him sort of as the X factor forward. As everybody is intrigued by his talent. They see other guys that maybe have other talents that he doesn't, but they really like the whole skill package of Raymond, and that's why I think some teams think that the Red Wings will take Raymond at 4.
Kevin, the Red Wings were also active over the weekend. They made a trade with the New York Rangers for defenseman Mark Stahl and a second-round draft pick in 2021 for future considerations. Will the fact that we now have Mark Stahl, who is a veteran defenseman, he's going to be a good presence on the blue line, does that change the draft strategy at all?
No, I don't think so. It doesn't change the draft strategy, but I got to say that I absolutely love this trade from the Red Wings perspective, and actually from the Rangers perspective. And there's two things that I think are really intriguing about it. First of all the rumors that's floating out there, you never heard any rumor about Stahl to the Red Wings. And I think that speaks to the way that Gordon, the general manager of the Rangers, and Yzerman works in Detroit. And that is that, as I mentioned before, they play it close to the vest. They're just careful about the information that leaks out. And from the Red Wings perspective, this is a terrific trade. And it's so typically Steve Yzerman, if you look at his history, who likes to make these what appear to be small maneuvers that end up having, pretty rich rewards. So you look at this one, he gets a veteran defenseman who's going to plug in. And I think the Red Wings want to work hard to make sure this team is more competitive next year. Stahl's going to help him do that. He knows this isn't his first rodeo. He knows how to play the game. He'll be a safe, solid player back there. And they get a second-round pick for taking his salary only for 1 year. Then they can trade him before the trade deadline and get, at the very least, a third-round pick and maybe another second-round pick, depending on how well he plays. So this is a terrific deal from the Red Wings perspective. I don't think it changes anything from the draft, other than if they were scouting around to look for another contract that they could take and get a draft pick. Well, they've done that. They can cross that off their list. And Steve said that he has room to do another. I'm not so sure they will, because I think they want to keep their options open, but they might. It just depends on what he can get at the draft. But I think this is a very good deal that will help him in a couple of ways, and including getting 2 assets, one now and maybe one later if they trade them, and making this defense a little bit more credible than it was last season.
Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today on Downtown Hockeytown. The draft is just days away, so we will definitely be having you back soon to take a look at what the Red Wings end up with.
I look forward to it.
Thanks again, and a big thank you to Labatt Blue Light for presenting Downtown Hockeytown. Labatt Blue Light, refreshing Canadian Pilsner. Visit your local retailer when safe to pick up some Labatt Blue Light.